Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times. Hello, and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. I'm here as ever with Francis and Tom. Guys, how has your week been?
It has been very, very good. It's been quite a busy week. We've obviously had last week the podcast. We weren't on the podcast. We had a week off, a few holidays. I know you've been away, Polly. I had a couple of days off as well. So we should be feeling nice and refreshed for this one with a fresh energy. But no, it's been a good week. Lots going on in the fintech world. Lots of news to bring you today as well. And yeah, I think it's been a good week. And I'm looking forward to the podcast today. How's your week been, Polly?
My week has been excellent. Like you said, I had a little bit of time off, so sadly missed the podcast, but we're back and we're better than ever. So it's a really exciting episode this week. And Francis, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Unfortunately, unlike you guys, I didn't have this long weekend, so, but it's not all bad because I got to enjoy the added fintech news that was coming across our desks. And at the start of this week, it was, we were having a lot come into our inbox, but as the week's gone on, it slowed down a little bit. But no, it's been really interesting and looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, what makes this podcast so very extra special is that we are not alone this week. We have a fantastic, very special guest joining us on the podcast this week. And I'm super excited to introduce Maluku Sano, co-founder and CEO at Mansa. Maluku, thank you so much for joining us this week. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you guys today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it would be great if you could just give us a quick intro as to, yourself and the kind of stuff that your company does, just to sort of kick us off, if that would be okay.
Definitely. So my name is Maluku. I am the CEO and co-founder of Mansa. At Mansa, we are a global settlement platform. So that means we help global fintech companies across emerging markets settle their transactions 24/7 without the need of pre-funding. Using stablecoins, we work with fintech companies across the whole stack, from B2B payment companies to fintech companies to virtual card providers, OTC on and off-ramp companies in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. We have been operating since August of last year, and we've done over $230 million in on-chain volume since inception.
Amazing stuff. Well, like I said, it is so awesome to have you here. We cannot wait to bring you in on the discussion. And I believe you have brought an article with you today for us to discuss. Do you want to just give us a quick rundown as to what that article is very, very quickly?
Yes, so it's essentially about the partnership that dLocal and BVNK have to essentially enable a faster payment processing for dLocal's companies and clients using stablecoins. And I believe that this speaks to the larger trend that we're seeing in the overall fintech market, where fintechs are now leveraging stablecoins to save on costs and also offer a better user experience to many of their clients, which is faster payments and faster settlement times.
Yeah, awesome. So we will get to your article in a little bit, but first we will come to our article that we're bringing to the table today, which I believe, Tom, you are going to present to us. So why don't you just take it away?
Absolutely. Well, our article that we've picked this week is very much related to yours in that it's also a little bit about, faster settlements, cross-border payments, and that's because we're going to be talking about a new Pan-African card scheme that has launched. And basically, the African Export-Import Bank, otherwise known as Afreximbank, has teamed up with the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, or PAPS, and the Mercury Payment Services, or MPS, to launch this first Pan-African card scheme. Now, the scheme, which is dubbed PAPSSCARD, is ultimately aiming to bolster financial sovereignty across Africa by building resilient and independent payment systems to help ease travel and boost trade integration. Now, as I'm sure most of you know and our listeners will know, a lot of card payments in Africa are currently routed through global systems, which can cause increased fees and loss of data control. Obviously, there's a big reliance on the likes of Visa and MasterCard still, which are like Western card schemes. And I think that in a move to overcome the challenges that come with that, which are slower settlements, higher costs, this PAPS card has been long in the works and is basically promising to process all of the transactions within Africa, within the continent, keeping all the transactions within the location, and ensure that all the value, data, and economic benefit is kept within Africa. And I think the sort of comment that sums it up best comes from Benedict Aroma, the president and chairman of the board of directors at Afreximbank. And he said that for too long, Africa's reliance on external payment systems has impeded trade, increased cost, and compromised control over financial data. But he says PAPS card changes that by empowering them to move money swiftly, securely, and affordably across our borders. And obviously, this is something that we've spoken about many times, is the challenges that are associated with cross-border payments, how certain card schemes can really add to the cost of certain settlements. And obviously Africa's a region that has really struggled with these kind of challenges specifically. And it's good to see that, something that's been long in the sort of talks is sort of Pan-African initiatives and schemes that can try and ease these challenges. And I think it was when I went to GTEx Africa in Morocco in, I think, 2023. I think it was the first event. And that was, such a huge topic of discussion, is how that is an initiative that so many of the fintechs wanted there, that businesses were looking out for. And this is kind of a huge step towards that. And obviously there is a long way to go still, but it seems like a very kind of significant news in that respect. So I wanted to come to you guys and get your take on it. What do you think about it? How much of an impact do you think this could eventually have? And also just, can you think of any challenges that are going to come along with the implementation of this? Francis, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that we're seeing sort of countries and companies across Africa look inwards to process payments rather than relying on overseas services. And the article states it very well, like you mentioned, that value, data, and economic benefit will all be kept in Africa. And I think when you think about the snowball effect that each of these things can have on an economy individually, for example, like, if you focus on value or if you focus on data, each of those can massively help a country's economy and stabilize it. But growing all three simultaneously, I think, will be massively advantageous for the entire region. And I believe that in order for the scheme to be successful, a lot of new jobs will need to be created. And I suppose this answers your question on like challenges, I guess. Because to ensure that the systems are constantly performing at expected levels across such a large region, there's got to be new jobs created and, more people to overlook it. I mean, of course, there are technologies like AI, which I'm sure are going to be used, and because automation, you need automated services nowadays. That it's not a nice to have; it's a necessity. But nonetheless, I do think it is going to create a load of jobs, and the job creations in and of themselves will have a huge benefit for the region, and give many who previously might not have had exposure to financial education the ability to learn transferable skills for the future and sort of set them up for life. And that in and of itself, I think, as well, is just really, really good. And the fact that the partnership will significantly advance Afreximbank's strategies to promote financial inclusion and boost intra-African trade, I think it's all fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to see how it turns out.
No, absolutely. I mean, on the face of it, as we see sort of many times with this kind of launch, it seems like there's so many benefits. And obviously it's such a huge initiative with so much great potential. And I think, there's just so much good with it. And obviously there are going to be some serious hurdles and challenges before it can reach that potential, which I think we're going to get into. But Polly, first of all, before we do, what's your take on this? Do you think, this is the great news that it seems, or are there some serious challenges that you think of that, could slow it down?
I think, no, I really agree with everything that Francis has just said. I think, it's something that's really exciting. And I think whenever we see kind of localized services like this being really pushed to the forefront, it can kind of only be a good thing. And especially when you think about sort of Africa and how, there's a lot of emerging markets across Africa, and building that up and having those independent payment systems, I think is absolutely brilliant. And we all know, how crucial cross-border payments are to a lot of the people that live in Africa. So being able to have that available that isn't rooted through that global systems, giving you the increased security, and as well as reducing those pesky fees that we all know that, cross-border transactions can bring, I think is brilliant. I think one of the things that you said, Francis, about the possible talent that you need, like the new jobs, and you maybe have some struggles with the talent and recruiting, I think also could actually be quite a positive as well if you kind of flip in and look at it from a different way. So I think we all know that Africa is, a great market when it comes to fintech from our own Middle East and Africa reports that we have done at the Fintech Times, a couple of years running. And so we know that there's a market there in Africa. And I feel like having a solution like this that does need the new talent, or at least, bringing the new jobs in, could really help boost that as a fintech economy as well, and really start bringing more people in to seeing Africa for the fintech market that it is, especially in all the different countries that we have in Africa and all the different specific localizations. I think that could be a really exciting thing that could be triggered here, in that this scheme goes well and then suddenly more schemes kind of open up and we see a lot more different payment services and a lot more sort of other innovations happening as it all kind of opens up, and then suddenly Africa is becoming even more of an amazing fintech hub. So I think there's a lot of potential here and a lot of things that could really go well. So yeah, I think while everything comes with challenges, as we all know very well, especially when implementing something new like this, and especially being, the first time this is happening, there's always going to be the challenges and there's always going to be the pain points. But I think realistically, looking at the bigger picture, if you kind of zoom out, this can only be a good thing. I think I'm struggling to really see any negatives. I'm struggling to see any major problems here, and just that anything that helps boost financial inclusion, anything that helps boost financial sort of sovereignty, or financial innovation, anything like that is a good thing. So yeah, really exciting, like you guys have said already.
No, absolutely. But I'm very excited to get your take on this, Maluka, as you're kind of joining us this week. But I guess that you could say you're our in-house cross-border settlements and payments expert right now. So I'm excited to see what your take on this. And are you in the same camp as us? This is only can be a really positive initiative.
I think this is an incredibly positive initiative for the continent as a whole, because if you look at historically how payments in the African continent have been done, let's say I'm a trader in Kenya and I want to trade with somebody that's in Nigeria, what usually happens is my Kenyan shillings get converted to US dollars. So I immediately lose. So like I immediately have experienced high fees. I lose money through the like exchange rate, and then they go to America first, get settled and cleared through an American bank, which is JP Morgan, for example, and then they arrive to the Nigerian bank, which is again adds another 5% of fees, and you lose an extra few percentage points just on the like exchange rate. So transacting between African currencies has been extremely difficult for the past few years. So what this does is this boosts financial integration and can also help boost trade, because there have always been questions and the different policies about how can we boost African financial integration and how can we make African countries trade amongst each other better. And in order to do that, we must first have the seamless transfer of funds that is instant. So an Egyptian can buy stocks on the Kenyan Stock Exchange or buy stocks on the Nigerian Stock Exchange using Egyptian pounds and do that instantly, or cross-border transactions instantly. So this will create the environment for businesses to trade with each other more. It will reduce the FX rates, which have plagued so many countries in Africa, and it will just lead to more financial inclusion and eventually as well to better jobs. But one caveat that I think PAPS has to work on with their payment scheme is that they must make sure that if I have a PAPS card, I can go to France, I can go to the US or to Asia and still use it at a merchant. So it must be interoperable with the global financial system as well. And it must also have the best exchange rate. So not only must African countries be able to trade amongst each other with their own currencies, but they must also be able to trade amongst the whole world with their own currency as well, removing the extreme reliance that we have on the dollar.
No, absolutely, and I think that makes a lot of sense, and I completely agree with what you're saying. I think there's obviously, historically that has been such a huge challenge, and those FX fees have been such a major sort of downplay on the the positives of trade that could happen. And I think if this is widely adopted by banks and fintechs across Africa, then as you said, the potential it could have is absolutely huge. And I think getting that infrastructure in place it's such a huge step towards achieving that sort of Pan-African ability to, as you said, trade between all the different countries there. And I think as we sort of look to the future, I think obviously there are going to be some sort of regulatory agreements that are going to have to be really spread across the entire continent, which could be a challenge. But I think, as you said, it's so many positives, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how it evolves in the future. And as you said, if they can achieve that global interoperability, that could be such a huge factor as well. So it's a very exciting initiative, and as we always say on this podcast, we'll be looking forward to seeing how it achieves and grows over the future, and we'll be keeping an eye on it for sure. But with that, why don't we move on to your article?
Yes. So my article today is about the partnership between BVNK, which is one of the leading stablecoin infrastructure companies, and dLocal, which is one of the leading pay-in and payout partners for people trying to do business in emerging markets. So this partnership will enable dLocal to adopt stablecoins and offer faster payouts, and also offer faster movement of funds globally. And as I said before in my intro earlier, this speaks to the larger trend that we have, where fintechs are now exploring and leveraging stablecoins to save cost on sending money and also receiving money, and also the ability to seamlessly transact in and out of emerging market currencies. But it also speaks to the wider convergence that we have between the Web3 world, stablecoins, and fintechs as well. And I expect like a lot more partnerships, like especially as stablecoins become more widely used in the global financial system.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and one of the things that really struck me about the article is we're constantly finding new use cases for stable coins and things that aren't your typical fiat currency, and I think this is a really great use case, and one that I think will really help a lot of people. Like we were just saying with Tom's article, cross-border payments are one of those things that are still being innovated, they're still being worked out, but we all know that they can be really tricky, they can be really expensive, they can be really slow. So they're the perfect melting pot for fintechs to come in and make things better. And I think it's really interesting going down the stablecoin route and how using those for to make things a lot easier, a lot faster, and a lot more secure without compromising that compliance and that control. And I think a lot of the times, these guys all know how sort of I'm not great when it comes to crypto and stable coins and anything like that. Like I can never quite get my head around it. But when you kind of explain it to me in a way that this makes sense and we can actually use it for something good, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, so there we go. That's what stable coins can be used for sure. But I mean, Tom, compared to your article on cross-border payments, what do you think of this one? Where do you kind of stand on the whole thing?
I think again, this is another example of different type of financial innovation that can solve a similar problem. I think it sort of shows that stable coins aren't just for like crypto native users anymore. They're becoming like really key part in global payments. And I think when we were talking about Africa before, the issues they were having with high FX fees and like weak banking infrastructure, slow settlements, and I think stablecoins, especially cross border, are a really good way that we're seeing that can enable faster global settlements, with less friction, and it can really actually help these emerging markets like Africa, LATAM, Asia. dLocal already works with global merchants and connects those merchants with these sort of harder to reach markets, and by sort of adding stable coins to its offering, I think that just enhances that connectivity globally. And I think we spoke about it recently, is just how stable coins, there's a real buzz around them and how they are really enabling these cross-border payments much faster, lower fees, and I think there's so much enthusiasm about them because of their potential and how much connectivity they can help achieve. So yeah, I think it's really good. And I think something we said a few weeks ago was just how stable coins a few years ago we were a bit like, okay, so what's going to happen with stable coins? We've got different countries looking at CBDCs, but is it really going to be taken up? Is anyone actually going to be interested in it, sort of consumers? But I think what we're really seeing is how instead of being just a national initiative for different countries, we're actually seeing how actually it's almost doing the opposite. It's really enabling this cross-border transactions, and I think that's something that is really positive, and really is only going to see a growth in these sort of stablecoin led initiatives. So yeah, I think it's all positive, and really looking forward to seeing how stablecoins really just change the game in that respect.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Francis, how about you? What do you think on this whole thing?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the stablecoin market, I feel like it's been around for a long, long time. Ever since I've been at the Fintech Times, stablecoins have been in the news, but they never really felt like they were they weren't this big thing at the time. They were sort of just like a small alternative, shall we say. Whereas, as Maluku mentioned, and Tom, you said as well, this year they've really taken off. They feel like, was it 2023 when AI took off? And it just seemed like out of nowhere, overnight, AI was like the hot topic. Despite it being in the industry for a long time already, it just massively boomed. And I feel like this is almost what's happening with stablecoins this year. It seems like you can't go anywhere to any events without stablecoins being in some sort of discussion. And I feel like that wasn't really the case before. I mean, you'd have the odd discussion here or there, but they weren't really the focus like they are now. And I think the partnership between dLocal and BVNK really showcases sort of exactly why stablecoins are a hot topic this year. Connecting nations via different payment rails and to ensure so connecting a nation internally to ensure a faster payment rail is one thing, but then looking how these capabilities can be taken sort of across borders, that's a whole nother thing. And like you guys have mentioned, the sort of challenges that it overcomes. And extending sort of fast, cost-effective payments across 40 markets is really, really impactful. And especially like you said, Tom, in these regions like Africa, Asia, Latin America, where new digital avenues are being opened up, what seems like it's faster than their more developed counterparts. And I think this is in large parts due to the, traditional challenges that developing markets have faced. And because of the mass amounts of financial exclusion, digital alternatives are being adopted quicker, and they are just showcasing how effective they really can be and why they should also be adopted in developed markets. So overall, yeah, I think it's a great partnership showcasing the power of stablecoins, and I really wouldn't be surprised if we see more partnerships like it.
Yeah, and if I may just add to what Francis has said, is these technologies like stablecoins and like PAPS enable markets that have previously been excluded, which is an African continent, which is a Southeast Asia, which is a Latin America, to leapfrog and really like develop like much quicker, especially because a lot of these economy are actually digital money first. So for example, like a country like Kenya, 90% of its economy passes through M-Pesa. Kenya is a completely cashless society, and you find that a lot in places like Thailand, where people use like Grab, or in places like Indonesia, where it's like Gojek, or in places like Latin America, where it's Nubank. So you have in these places people that already have the propensity to use digital money, and technologies like stablecoins are just digital money that's interoperable and has the ability to be used everywhere. So it's much easier for these economies to adapt and leverage the benefits of this new technology. And that is why I believe stablecoins have really popped off, because not only are people seeing the real use cases, but we finally have the infrastructure now available in many of these different countries that enable stablecoins to scale exponentially. I think stablecoins last year or this year did more transactions than Visa for the first time. So like there is actual real value being created.
Wow, awesome. That's amazing. I mean, that does bring us to the end of our discussion today. That's all we have time for. But thank you so much, guys, for bringing your opinions and your articles. And Maluka, of course, thank you so much for bringing your article. I think it's really interesting to see how stable coins are going to play out. Like you said, Francis, they've kind of popped up out of nowhere. So it'll be really interesting to see where they go. If you want to hear any more about anything we've talked about today, make sure you head on over to the Fintech Times, where you can read plenty more news and insights over there. But now let us do my favorite segment of the podcast when we have a guest, which is our quick fire questions. Is that what it's called? Quick fire questions, or did we change it? I can't remember.
I mean, it's changed so many
I know.
times at this point. Who knows?
Anyway, the quickfire questions. So these are a couple of quickfire questions for our lovely guest, Maluku. So some of these are fintech related. Some of these are very much not. They're a little bit silly. They're a little bit fun. But basically, Maluku, we just really want to get, your really quickfire, fun answers to these questions. So we will take it in turns to ask you a question. So please give us your quickfire answer. So I believe, Francis, you were going first. So why don't we take it away? Maluku, are you ready? Are you ready for the quickfire questions?
Yes, I am.
Well, starting a little bit formally, perhaps, but what has been your proudest achievement at Mansa?
Like, that's a great question.
You can list
I've actually
multiple.
really thought about that. Yes, I've never actually thought about it. But I think, right, like what has been one of my proudest achievements, number one, has been enabling fintechs in like emerging markets that have been financially excluded or have faced incredibly high fees from being able to move funds in and out of the countries much quicker, which in turn reduces the cost of sending money for many of the clients, because historically a continent like Africa has had the highest fees for sending and remitting money at 10%. So the people we work with are able to get that reduced significantly. Same thing in Latin America, where it's a 6%, or Southeast Asia, which is a 5%. I think the second thing that I'm incredibly proud of is the traction and how quickly we have scaled over the past 9 months, and thirdly is just assembling a really great team of people that is mission aligned, and where everybody just wants to do great, and everybody wants to make sure that whatever we do benefits the emerging markets that we're working in.
100%. I think once you've got everyone buying in, that's the ultimate success, really, isn't it?
Now, our next question, I think I'll preface it by saying we are a fintech podcast, but anytime we get a chance, we'll dip into just talking about food. I feel like it speaks to our soul. And that's why our next question is not fintech related, but it is simply, what is your favorite cuisine and why?
Oh, that is a very tough question, because I believe that I'm a lover of good food. Right, and I have and I love multiple cuisines, but I'll start off is I love West African cuisine, especially things like jollof rice or achike. I live in the Middle East, so I'm a big fan of Mediterranean, Middle Eastern food, like Lebanese food, and Turkish food as well.
That's cuisines that we can all get behind as well.
So back onto the more serious ones. So what is a key lesson you learned in one of your previous roles?
Be humble. Be humble. Be patient. Have a thick skin. And then I think people overestimate what they're able to do in a short amount of time, but underestimate what they're able to do in a long amount of time. Right. So just be humble. Control what you can control. Don't get ahead of yourself. Never go to sleep with a win, and because you wake up with a loss. Always keep focused, and always remember that it's still day one, and most importantly, be conscious of the fact that it can be here tomorrow, it can be here today but gone tomorrow. So you should always just have faith in yourself, have faith in your abilities, and those around you as well.
That is a really good answer, and one I think we should all definitely take heed of, for sure.
Thank you.
Agreed. That is a fantastic answer. Perhaps looking at a very serious question as well. Given that it's now the sort of summer here in the UK, where is your favorite place to go on holiday?
I haven't taken a holiday in 2 years. But if I would have to choose, Istanbul. I think Istanbul is one of the most historic places in the world, and you've got a mixture of city and sea and metropolitan. It's such a wonderful place.
Well, I'll make a note of that and make sure next holiday I go Istanbul.
Yeah, I think I'll do the same, and also preface by saying maybe it's time for you to take a holiday. If it's been a couple of years, might be time to relax.
It is. Hopefully soon.
Obviously, you said you're based in the Middle East. So to take us on into our next question, what are some of the unique trends that you see differentiating, say, the UAE's payment space from others globally. Is there any big trends that you see that really differentiate it?
Yeah, like I think it's everything is just all about the environment that's created by the regulators, like in the country, right? I think they have created an environment that encourages innovation, that's very forward thinking, have created an environment that attracts the best people from around the world. So you have a really, really great ecosystem of people building in like different things across different sectors. So you have this melting pot, which and it kind of like reminds me of New York. And I think another thing is, which I think is very, very underrated, like when it comes to where to live and like how to create like a great ecosystem, is safety, right? Like I am incredibly comfortable, leaving my house at any time in the UAE, or just leaving my computer like at a cafe while I go like to the bathroom or something like this. I think like all these factors like have just created the perfect environment to build and scale a new age tech business. I think that's very much in contrast with Europe. So I'm like originally like Dutch, like I'm a Dutch citizen. But I feel like in Europe, the issue is that we have started to be against innovation. We have stopped encouraging failure, and like we've made it incredibly difficult to like scale a business, right? So and like that's very sad, because I feel like Europe has everything. It has the talent, like it has the people, it has the weather, right? But I feel like on some of the other things we haven't been as forward thinking as some of the other countries and regions.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely a region that we've seen that just had so much growth in the last 10 years alone compared to all the other global regions. And I think it's such an exciting area to see where it can go next and what kind of innovations we're going to see from the region.
So Maluki, this is your final quickfire question, and arguably this is the most important question you will ever answer in your life. Okay, what is your ideal filling for a sandwich?
Ooh, depends. Am I having a bagel, or like
Ooh,
is it
a
like a
bagel has been
baguette?
thrown
Is it
into the
bagels? Is
ring.
it sourdough bread?
Oh, guy, is bagel a sandwich, guys? I'm going to need a jury
I
opinion
think
here.
that needs its own podcast to answer. We haven't got time to debate this.
That's
This
40
that's a very
minutes right
contentious
there.
issue.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, bagels don't sound okay, but if it's all right, I would take eggs, ketchup, some cheese, and a steak.
Beautiful, delicious, sounds delightful. That brings us to the end of our quickfire questions, which aren't really very quick at all. But thank you so much, Maluku, for indulging us and answering our silly questions and our serious questions, and some really amazing answers from you there. We are coming to the end of this week's podcast now, but very quickly, we like to do a thing on the podcast called What I Learned This Week, Maluku. So each week we are learning so much new stuff about fintech, being on the editorial team, that we thought it would just be really fun to share little facts and things with our listeners. So, I mean, Tom, what have you learned this week?
This week, one of the news that really caught my eye, and sort of keeping the sort of blockchain theme, the loose blockchain theme that we've had alive. Basically, Binance has launched the world's first Sharia-compliant multi-token staking platform, which is enabling investors worldwide to earn passive income on multiple cryptocurrencies like BNB, Ethereum, and Solana. And that's all fully aligned with Islamic finance principles. So I thought that was just an exciting launch to see.
Amazing stuff. And Francis, what have you learned this week?
So this week I learnt that Kaspi, the super app in Kazakhstan, accounts for 70% of the country's total online sales. And given that this is a country that we don't really talk about, but definitely deserves a lot more attention, I just thought it was really interesting.
Lovely. And then what I learned this week is that Dex has partnered with Airwallex to help ease bookkeeping for SMBs. A little bit out there, but I think actually, we've been talking about payments a lot, and I think this fits really nicely and all about making things easier for our small businesses. But anyway, that does bring us to the end of our podcast. Maluku, thank you so much for joining us this week. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on as our guest. It's been really fantastic to hear your insights. And thank you so much for bringing your article. It's been a really fun discussion this week, so I hope you've enjoyed being on our podcast as well.
Thank you so much. The pleasure has been all mine. I've had such a fantastic time with you guys. Thank you so much.
Shucks, thank you so much. Anyway, guys, well, Maluku, hopefully we will see you again on this podcast very soon. Francis and Tom, I'll see you next week, and I'll catch you on the next one.
See you guys next week.
Maluku, thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using hashtag TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.